is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. Is everybody good? I'm doing good. Everything is good here. Everything is good. And right off the bat, before I forget, I'm going to, because people have asked me, why don't you talk about your chickens anymore? Because I'm putting all my chicken stuff on, I went to TikTok. I hadn't gotten to TikTok. And I said, you know what? I'm going to move my chicken stuff to TikTok. So if you look for Chickenista _ lady, you will find all my stuff on my chickens, my adventures in chicken land outside and, with my dogs and all of that. Because it's just easier, than here and everything. So because people have asked me, what's going on with your chickens? Yes, everything is check out Chickenista Lady on TikTok. There you go. Anyway, guys, everything is good here. As a matter of fact, the last video I posted was I finally put up my Halloween decorations, and my dogs went because I have these long drapey things that I have like a gazebo out there, and I hung them in there, and my dogs were like, huh? Yeah. They didn't know what to make of it. And they were like, oh, then I bring them and I let them, and then they're okay with it. But yeah, it's incredible. Animals, they get, used to their normal things. And, so yeah, that's, and I know some of you, because you know that I'm in northern Florida as far as Ian skirted in south of where I'm at. All right. There was a time, even though I'm in the middle of the state, like I tell everybody, I grew up in Miami. So I grew up with hurricanes. Okay. So when we moved, we decided no more coastal living because of that. We're right smack in the middle of the state as far as between the coasts. So even if something comes up, we're not going to get steamrolled. But still, there's concerns. We have a lot of big, giant trees, a lot of oak trees out here that even if we don't get the major impact or the 100 and over mile per hour winds, still it will bring down trees. And of course, since a lot of the utilities here, especially in the rural areas, are above ground, that's it. You can, your electricity is gone. Bye-bye for a bit. So yeah. So we were holding our breaths, and of course, as everybody knows, it came in south of Tampa, and then it cut across just south of us. And yeah, but we had a few days where we had these warnings and tornadoes and everything, and the rain and all that stuff. So yeah, but everything came through okay. And of course, like I tell everybody, I'm looking at these pictures of Fort Myers and Lee County, and I lived through Hurricane Andrew down in the Homestead, Florida area in 1992, and it was been there, done that, unfortunately. But it's the same thing. Structures flat, landscape totally changed, trees gone, boats where they shouldn't be. Yeah, been there. I lived that firsthand. And you know what? They're not putting it as often, and I know that they showed that some people have been arrested for looting and stuff like that, but people don't realize how quickly that happens. And I live that. Okay, I live that where looters will go out there because they know that a lot of people, for different reasons, either because their houses aren't livable, or maybe their relatives or friends said no, you can't stay there. The houses, there's a lot of empty houses. And believe it or not, not all of the stuff is ruined. So they go in there and they'll go in there and loot. And there's also people that like said, I'm going to ride out the storm somewhere else. And these houses are empty, and people are surprised that somebody could take advantage of. It does, and it happens very quickly, very quickly. Like I said, I lived through that, and sometimes the media does not show. Um, in other words, when they show that sheriff going, "We're gonna get you," and you think, "Wow, is he overdoing it?" No, he's not. He's not. That's a real big problem in the aftermath of these natural disasters. It's not only hurricanes, but stuff like that. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to the paranormal, shall we? The good thing is, we have a guest today. This is his first time here on Stories of the Supernatural, and his name is Todd Wilcox. He's also known as the Slipstream Shaman. And he has had a lifelong fascination with alternative healing, consciousness expansion, and human potential. His first book, Slipstream Shaman, Using Quantum Healing for Individuals, Communities, the Planet, and Beyond, was recently published, and the next two books in the series will be out soon. He also loves talking about the paranormal and hosts a radio program called My Side of the Universe, okay, which we're going to ask him about. And basically, he, even though, we're going to ask him about what, the Slipstream Shaman, what is that, and all these other neat stuff. But help me welcome him today. How are you doing, Todd?
I'm doing great, Marlene. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
No, on the contrary, it's my pleasure. Let me ask you, how did you find yourself in this field? Were you interested as a kid, or was it an event that happened to you? How did that come about?
So yeah, as a kid, I can remember watching TV shows that had witch doctors and voodoo and all that stuff, and I was really interested in how it worked. Didn't think I would be something like that, but I was really interested in it. And about it's been close to 20 years now. 20 years ago, I was in a paranormal group, and you know how it is when you're in a group, you get to know other groups, and
Yeah.
you make friends in other groups. And I was contacted by a friend in another group that said, hey, we're putting together a group that's going to go to the places that nobody else can help, some really bad things. And I said, yeah, I'd be great. That's why I'm
Yeah.
in this. Let's do that.
Uh-huh.
But then I said, how are we going to do it?
Yeah, right.
And
Yes.
so we started looking for people to help us learn what to do. And one of the people that we brought in was a shaman, and she was teaching us about our energy. And the unfortunate thing, and I talk about this in the book, the unfortunate thing was she was trying to force her energy onto us. She
Okay.
wasn't letting us find our energy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I talk about is as you're learning things like this, if something doesn't ring true, if something doesn't feel right, it probably is not for you. So just adjust it a little bit until it does feel right, until it does work. Don't be afraid to go slightly off path to make it work, because something that works beautifully for me may not work right
Sure.
for you. So don't be afraid to do that. And
Right. It's not a one
so she
size
was,
fit all kind of thing.
for sure, for sure. So she was teaching us how to find our energy, and she was telling the group that it's going to be warm, and it's a certain color, and it's shaped like this, and mine was completely different. My energy was cool to the touch. It
Okay.
was light blue. It was kind of the color that where our names are on your
Mm-hmm.
screen here. It was kind of that color, and
Okay.
it kind of looked like a ball, and that wasn't at all what she was describing, and it was so frustrating that I couldn't. I just kind of quit listening. I disengaged. I paid attention to what she was doing because I was going to do it later, but I couldn't work on it with her saying the wrong thing for me.
Okay.
And so I started messing with it and practicing, and as I was working with my energy, I started thinking about, well, how can I focus it more, and I thought about, well, maybe rattles can help me, or drums. And so I started building rattles. And it's funny, when you're supposed to have something, it appears. About the time I
Yep.
was thinking about that, a friend of mine's building drums. So I made him a couple rattles. He made me a drum, and
Okay.
so I experimented with both. And for a long time, I really needed the rattles to get where I was going, um, and to hold my focus there. And through practice, and mostly I was just using my energy for protection at the time, just covering me in the energy for protection.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know if I stumbled on it, or if it's something the universe wanted, but I found what I called my quantum room. I was in this place where I could do anything. I would work on my energy, bring it into my hands, cover myself in it, and then go to this room. And when the room first started, it was my energy was this light blue, and the room was a gray, swirly, misty place. And and as I would ask questions, I would get answers in there. And so it was kind of like meditation, but on steroids, or prayer with answers that I could hear. It's hard to say exactly what was happening, but I was starting to get answers, and I could actually meditate. Before that, meditation was sitting in a chair, breathing, trying to clear my
Right.
mind, and then falling asleep. And I didn't get anything out of it.
I'm
But
sorry.
when I went,
I laugh because anybody that's tried meditation will know what you're talking about.
yes, and so this time, this I could actually do the meditation in there, and it was super powerful. I started to request guides. Guides would come to me. I when I, we were still working on helping people, and I thought, the best thing we could do is bring some force with us. So when I'm in the quantum room, I asked for a warrior team. Can a warrior team come to me? And
Okay.
it didn't end up being what I thought. I thought it was going to be like maybe some big guys or some gods, or something coming that will help me fight a demon or whatever.
Right.
And what it ended up being was dogs that I used to have
Really?
would come to me. Yeah, the first one through was a beagle. Her name was Desi. Very loving dog, beautiful dog, the most ferocious dog I've ever seen when she was protecting her yard.
Let me tell you something. I'm looking at that picture that you got over your shoulder, and I was going,
Yeah,
"Is did you?" Okay. All right.
that's a Springer. That's a Springer Spaniel, and there's
Okay.
several that help me. I
Okay.
love dogs, and Springers are normally what I have, but I happened to have
Mm-hmm.
Desi for a while, and she had this great nose, and she was ferocious. And and other dogs came to me.
Let me
What
ask
you
you.
would
I'm going to
call,
interrupt you real quick.
sure,
What point did you were you able to shift from your expectation, especially if you're going to be doing that type of investigation? It's already
yeah,
from what you're telling me, you're going into places that you already know. Hey, other people said, forget it, we're out of here.
right,
From getting the warrior, like you said, like Thor is going to come and help me out with this, versus you get a beagle. Did you
yes.
question yourself at that point, going, okay, that's it, I don't know about this? What happened?
Not it was weird. I didn't really question myself then, and
Okay.
then we brought other things in, and I ended up getting some very very strong things that did come in.
Okay.
People probably laugh, but one of them was, if you read the Edgar Rice Burroughs series on Mars, there was a giant green fighting man named Tars Tarkas. That was something that came,
Yes.
and my favorite giant monster Gamera came to help. So I did have some
Okay.
heavy guns, but mostly it
Okay.
was it was dogs that came to me at first.
That is so interesting.
And what happened was, instead of going after demons and monsters, we I would invite the person in that was having the trouble, invite them to
Mm-hmm.
my quantum room, and they would come there in a metaphysical way, and they would be in there, and Desi would start sniffing around them and pull something out of them, and it might be a walnut from their knee,
Mm-hmm.
and so then we would take the walnut and we would just incinerate it basically with energy,
Okay.
because we didn't know what we were doing. What I was finding was people were saying, yeah, we still have the problem with the noises and the scratches, but my health is getting better. And
Yes.
so I shifted, and I thought, okay, well, let's look at what we can do with people's health and use these warriors for that. And that was when we started helping people. But what I found was, many times it would come back. So we would pull things out of their body, incinerate it,
Mm-hmm.
but things would come back. And it was kind of a process as I was learning this. And I remembered that nature abhors a vacuum. So then we started taking things out of people,
And filling it.
and then we'd fill them with love,
Ah,
to
okay.
heal it and to heal it and
Hey.
to make it better, so nothing else could come in.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
I remembered another thing. Excuse me, I've got a bad
No,
cough.
don't worry about that at all.
And then I remembered another thing, and that was that most things start with a positive intention. And
Mm-hmm.
so these things that we were taking out of them and incinerating them, many of them I think I need to have Desi take a lung out. Um, Many of those things started as a positive intention. So we would we would use the energy to debride them, to clean them off, and then
Mm-hmm.
we would give them love energy. I also assembled a love team, and so
Okay.
now the love team would not only fill this person with love, where we took stuff out, but would also give these things love that we took out of the person. So it might be Desi might have pulled a stick out of their stomach, and it could
Mm-hmm.
represent anything. I don't
Sure.
try to
Exactly.
interpret.
Right.
It's
People sometimes
just
don't
what it is.
realize that it's not literally a stick.
Right?
It's just that
Yeah.
the it's looks like a stick. But
It's
anyway,
how
keep
it's
going.
representing itself to me. Yes.
Right. Right.
And so we would take the stick out, debride it, get it ready for healing, give it the
Mm-hmm.
healing, and then it would change to something else. So
Okay.
one of my favorite ones, I had a lady on my radio show, and we were talking about different healings, and I told her, on a break, hey, I can do a healing for you if you'd like, and she said, great. And so after the show, I did a healing, and Desi was really concerned about her back, and she started pawing on her back, and pulled this rag from her chest through her back, um, and it had
Mm-hmm.
been wrapped around her heart, and
Okay.
we debrided it, gave it love, and it changed into this young blonde-headed boy who just looked up at her with this just so much love and smiled,
Okay.
and then he walked
Uh-huh.
away. And when I told her about that, she started crying and told me about her heart. I still am not sure what significance the little boy had, but I think there was something there. She was very happy. Told me that she was having heart trouble. She was on some medicine. It was going to be increased soon, and that
Okay.
her heart was going the wrong way. It wasn't healing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
she went to a doctor less than a month later and got good news. Her heart was in better shape. He wasn't going to give her more medicine. He was
Okay.
even going to consider going backwards. Over the course of the next year, he slowly took her off the medicine. She is now, this has been 4 years now, she's off the medicine.
Great.
She is healthy. She does full contact karate. She runs. She dances. She does all kinds of things. Her heart's
Right.
good now. And and I'm not saying that I just went in and healed her heart. What I
Mm-hmm.
think happened was things were taking place, and the energy around her heart wasn't right. And we went in and helped that energy. We manipulated the energy, got it flowing right. So now the things that she was doing, the medicine, the food, the exercise, whatever she was
Right.
supposed to
Right.
do, now those were able to do their job
Sure.
because that problem was gone. So I don't think that I did 100% of it, but I think I might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and allows these things to happen.
And you know
Um,
why I find that so interesting? Because I used to be a hypnotherapist. I haven't done hypnosis for a while, but I did do a lot of what they call spiritual attachments, okay, which present themselves in the body, like you said, at first glance as something different. It could be an inanimate object sometimes. But then when you go a little bit further, sometimes you'll see exactly what you just described. This thing
yes,
went from a stick to a blonde kid or a blonde boy or whatever.
yes.
All right. And sometimes these attachments, and God knows for whatever reason why it went to her heart, it could be a number of things.
Hmm.
But people, I've heard of this happening, and sometimes people don't understand really what the source of that is. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, I have a lot of theories because I used to do alternative hypnotherapy, but I think that is so fascinating because that afflicts more people than people realize, by the way. Um,
Absolutely. And
yes.
items like that I call a companion. These are things that started off with a positive intent.
Yes.
Just as an example, a little kid's getting yelled at by his dad, and he kind of shrinks down, gets quiet, doesn't respond. The dad quits yelling. So now the kid's learned, if I do that, he'll leave me alone. Well, that works great with the dad. Doesn't work as good at school. Works even less well in high school.
Right.
Really causes trouble in college, and then it's even worse in work. So something that started out with a positive intent to help is now holding you back and
Right.
keeping you from getting where you want to be. And what we're doing is releasing that energy to go be what it's supposed to be, to go out and do more
Sure.
of its good things. Those are companions. We also run into parasites. which are things
Yes.
that are just feeding off of people. And
Yes.
those
Yes.
we handle differently. We really go after them and put up shields so they can't come back. We burn them so they don't want to come back.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of things to keep them away. And so there's two different things. 95% of the time it's going to be a companion, but there are
Okay.
those times where it's a parasite and those cause a
Right.
lot of problems.
Let me ask you, didn't you come across when you were doing these paranormal investigations that sometimes, I'm going to use attachments, but we know
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about, that the attachments were, even though they might have had something like you said happening in their house as far as paranormal, the attachment might have even predated the house. And in some cases, depending on what it was, it sometimes even opened them up to pulling stuff in or activate. In other words, they weren't the same thing. They wasn't the same source. But sometimes, depending on what it was, like you said, you know how exactly what you just described. That's something that at some point becomes a disadvantage.
Yes. Yeah,
And
and there's
in a
and
paranormal
you run
world,
into
it might have made them weaker, a target for
mhm.
paranormal occurrences. Okay.
Yeah, and people will many times you go in and however you get something away from them, these attachments that are on them,
Yes.
however you get them away, many times they come back because the people really didn't want them gone. It made them
Yes.
special. It was something that, that they could say,
Yes.
hey, this is happening to me.
Sense of
And
familiarity
yes, and
also.
so it's not uncommon for, and that's something that has to be addressed: is do you really want this gone? Will you leave it gone?
Yes.
Are you going to try to get it back? And if you want to get it back, we don't need to waste our time.
I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of people, when they hear about this, most people's reactions, of course, are what the hell, whatever that is, get out. But
Yeah.
human beings, God, we are creatures of habit, and like you said, whether it's the specialness or the sense of familiarity or identity, almost with it,
Yes.
depending on how long they've
Hmm.
had that going on. When they get to the point, like you just said, where you said we're going to get rid of it, it's like no, 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 wait, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, uh, yeah, I know that there are people that will think twice about it because it's almost like, well, I'm not really happy, or maybe this thing has caused me problems. God, in this case, like even this lady, a health problem, but it's what I
Yes.
know.
Yes. And sometimes, especially like in the paranormal realm, when it's a problem, they
Mm-hmm.
get a little bit of an adrenaline, and they kind of
Oh,
get that
sure.
excitement. They get addicted to it, and
Yes.
they don't want to lose that. It's like smoking a cigarette, or it's like taking coffee, or something to get your heart going. So yeah, there's a
Yes.
lot of reasons people would you know at face value want it gone, but then they have that addiction attraction thing going on where they
Mm-hmm.
just can't let it go.
Yes. And that happens more times than people. Um, it's like almost that love hate. Even though hate, it's like, and I tell everybody, even when I would hypnotize people for, let's say, smoking cessation. We're going through the process, especially if they were a real heavy smoker and they've been smoking for a long time, especially if they started when they were kids. When you started trying to take that addiction, that to them, their identity was so hooked up to that cigarette that for them, when you're trying to pull them away, it was like you're trying to rip part of me away.
Yes.
That's how they identify it, even though they know that this, and how can I guess my point is, how much we always think of, let's say, a cigarette as a physical organic addiction. Most of it, believe it or not, is up here.
Yes.
That's really where the battlefield is. It's not the nicotine or none of that. It's
Yeah.
the how they identify with that cigarette, and I mean a bunch of other things. So I understand perfectly well what you're describing. That would appear to be clear cut. Like, how would you not want to get rid of this? For some people, they dither on it. They're like, hmm. And so I'm glad you cleared that up. It's like, why make us go through all these hoops if you're going to be
Yeah.
welcoming it back or wanting it back? And let me tell
Yeah.
you something. In this case, let's go into the paranormal. No, we're not talking addiction. And I'm sure maybe you've run across it as a shaman. That's all something like that needs is an invitation to return.
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be a strong invitation. It can just be a
Mm-mm.
thought, just a
Yes.
short little thought, and can bring it right back in. So
Yes.
yeah, you've got
Yes.
to really be careful with these things.
Right. Well, and let me ask you, did you run across that when you were doing any of these paranormal investigations? I love it when you said we're going to go where angels fear to tread. Hey, the one that everybody's like, no, this is just a little bit out of our. Did you ever find that? How can I say the almost the same thing that even if in some cases it was, um, for lack of a better word, horrific, there was either one person or that one person that still wanted it there, like you said, because it was, I don't know, making them feel special in a bad
Yeah,
way, but
and I would say most of the time with the when you say hauntings, I didn't find so much that it was about a place as it was a person.
thank
Um,
you, my God,
it
yes,
seemed to be more there's more attraction to a person than a place.
yes,
And
yes.
the times that you do find a haunted place, I'm not so sure it's haunted. To me, it's more of a place that the veil is thin,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're hearing and seeing are just things on the other side of the veil, just in another dimension. I've often thought about, what if I'm doing a paranormal investigation and I'm just at a place where the veil's very thin,
Mm-hmm.
and in that dimension, there's another group doing a paranormal investigation, and we're
Right.
asking each other questions, and we
Right.
both think
And
there's
it's like,
ghosts
yeah,
on the other
that's it's like did you ever run across something like, since you were talking about like a portal in some places where maybe something was crossing on over?
Yeah, there's places that you go to that seem very very thin, where things can where I think they can come through, and not just places, but especially in the work I do, there's you find, well, let's just talk about one of the things that's in the book. There was a house
Mm-hmm.
that seemed to just suck the energy out of people,
Okay.
and the owner asked me to do a cleansing on it because she was going to rent the basement to somebody, and she had had bad luck with people not staying there long, and even not even living. She had people that had died living there. So
Oh God.
I went in and, yeah, did a cleansing, and what I found was there was what you could call a portal.
Okay.
What it looked like was in the back of this basement, and it was about a 4 foot circle, and I couldn't see how far it went, but you could just feel the energy being sucked through this thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what was happening was anybody that was living down there got so drained that they either just moved away or got so sick that they passed
Right. If
away.
I imagine maybe if they already had health problems to begin with.
Yeah, and then they just didn't survive it. So the first thing I did was separate that from the house, put a shield up around the entire house to keep it away.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to send something through to like hurt it so it wouldn't come back. That was unsuccessful, but I did get the house sealed. And as I was getting ready to leave, as I was walking through this basement in the quantum form, I wasn't there physically. It was all through my mind, through energy and spirit. I'm walking through the basement, and I see three of these entities that some people call shadow people, some people
Yes.
call the Hat Man. I
Mm-hmm.
call them the Watching Men, and
Okay.
because they just seem to be watching. And
Mm-hmm.
there was three of them down there. And for those people that don't know what I'm talking about, they're about 6 feet tall, built pretty big. It looks like they have a hat or a helmet on. They have a face, but you can't see it. They have a long coat. It's usually their entire colors. They're just monochromatic. They could be black, charcoal gray, dark blue, um, and they just seem to be watching. There are a few people that say they've seen colored eyes, like yellow and red eyes. I have
Right.
never seen that. I have talked to three people that I believe, and they saw it, saw the eyes, but I'd say 99% of the people I talk to don't see any eyes.
Okay.
And when I see these things on TV, the stories that they're talking about, I kind of wonder if it's blown out of proportion to get people to watch, because
Sure.
the experiences I've personally had with these things and with most of the people I've talked to are that they just watch. They're just interested in watching. And I wonder if they may even be an aspect of us.
Okay.
I was talking with one guy when I was doing some research on these things, and he said he had one at the front of his bed, and that's where you usually see them, front of your bed, and
Right.
that's really fun to wake up to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as he was looking at this thing, it said, "I am you, we are they." It said this weird thing, something like that. I
Right.
can't remember exactly. It walks through him, so now it's behind him, and my friend's point of view goes from looking at this thing in front of him, like towards his feet, to now his point of view is standing above his own body, looking down at himself. He
Okay.
is now in this thing, looking at himself,
Okay.
and he thinks that that was a part of him from the future that was checking in on him. And so these
Okay.
things might be time travelers. Some people think they're ghosts. I think there's some kind of time traveler or dimensional traveler, and I think they're just curious. They're just looking, and it might even be us doing our own end of life review, um,
Okay.
and that's how we're seeing ourselves. Who knows? That's the frustrating part with the paranormal.
Right. And the thing is this
I
is
don't
the
know.
that people see it like oh, there goes my camera. Mm, no, my camera is not unplugged, but let's see let's see if I can get this. Hold on. Oh, we're at the mercy of the computer, let me tell you.
One of the watching men got in front of it.
I'm telling you, you start talking about that and somebody said, I call it paranormal sabotage.
Yes.
Like, hey, hold on, let's see. Okay. That timing is pretty suspicious. Let's see. Hold on.
For many of us in this field, we find that there's a real problem with us and electronics. And
You know what? People say, oh, that's just, and I'm like, no, you know what? When you've done this, and I'm going to tell you, I've used this camera, on other meetings and everything, and it's been working fine, and it's like, no, I wish I was making that up, but I'm not making that up. It's for real. Let's see.
yeah,
Hold on. Let's see. All right, come on, you guys. Let's see. Believe it or not, no kidding, Todd. This is the first time that my camera has gone sideways on me.
yeah, it's truly when I'm involved, there's a good chance electronics are going to fail.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and my friend Ron, who's also in the book, we have a long story about helping him with his heart trouble. He
Okay.
had a parasite, but that guy, holy moly, if him and I get together, there's like going to be a county-wide power outage. There's nothing special about the ability of the two of
Hold
us
on, let
to
me
knock
see if I
out
can get
power.
this. That is, you know what? I mean, I've had, oh, let's see. This, come on, come on, come on. Let's see, what if we do it this way? Will that make you happy? Let's see. Obviously not. Okay, settings. Let's see. I have to laugh. I'm laughing because some like I said, I've this camera has never gone out. Sometimes the audio go wonky or like yeah, but this is the first time, and I'm laughing because it's like, oh, Marlene, you know what?
Yeah,
Adventures in Paranormal Land. Hold on.
absolutely.
It's like, yeah. Let me see. How about if we do this?
Well, while you don't have a picture, I'll show my book.
Go right ahead.
Here's
Be
here's the
my
Slipstream
guest.
Shaman book. You can find that at my website, slipstreamshaman.com, and order it through Amazon. And I'm new to Instagram. I would love to have you go over and do a follow at Instagram. All the updates will be on that. And YouTube, I'm fairly new to that, but there's a couple videos up there, and there'll be lots more. So I would love it if you could go over there, subscribe, do some likes, and get some activity there. And this whole thing is about helping. It's the healings that I do. I don't charge for.
Let's see.
and it's just to help.
Let's
So
see. Hold on. I have
that's
to
how we
get up
keep
and.
things going, is through the book and through the different sites. And Marlene, I wish I could send you some good energy to help that, but my electrical energy usually violates it.
He's like, "Urgh." Hold on, let me see. You know what? Give me 1 second. There's always a fallback to this. Because, like Marlene, in this, you always have a plan B, plan C, you know. But you know what? It's that shadow people conversation. I don't know.
Yeah,
Somebody there is like, oh, not happy. Not happy that we started talking. I was like, oh my God, he's going to talk about that.
people are going to
No,
know us.
they're gonna know we watch them. Hold on, I'm
So
doing
for
something.
people that do have the shadow people show up and it scares them, one thing you can do is use your energy, and on the book you can see the hands of the person
Right.
holding the energy in between. That's how you find your energy. You're gonna take your hands and bring them together and start feeling what it's like. And it might be warm, it might be cold. Who knows what color? Mine started out as a light blue, and it's now shifted to what kind of looks like a sparkler. It
Okay.
like light shining through a diamond. So they change. They can change, but whatever
Okay.
color or temperature you have. But just after you get it, just put it over your whole body, and then expand it out so it's covering your whole house and protecting your house, and that'll help
Okay.
you feel better if those things or other things are bothering you. That's kind of the first line of defense, is to just get your energy around you and create a force field, for lack of a better term.
Let's see. This is. You know what? And it's really funny because okay, with OBS camera. Let's see. I'm gonna start my virtual camera. Let's see if I can get this. All right. Settings. My virtual camera. Come on. Okay, stay there. I'm going to withdraw just a second. I'm going to come back in.
Okay. Now you guys are stuck with me.
Let's see. And you know what's really funny about this? Let's see.
And just me again. Yeah, but search me on Instagram, Slipstream Shaman, and the same at YouTube, Slipstream Shaman, and that's where we'll do all our updates. And I need lots of, I hope, friends. And thank you everybody for sticking with us. This is this is a lot of fun. And just so everybody knows, I do healings for people. I don't charge. If you send me an email, if you go to my website, you'll find my email, and it's just slipstreamshaman@gmail.com. But there's a link there, and you can ask for a healing. I'm about 2 weeks behind. Sometimes I get a little farther, just depending on how many people ask. But I don't charge for those, and I can do it remotely. Um, if you have something you would like me to work on, just let me know. Don't give me too much information, because then my head takes over instead of the spirit and the energy. So, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're hoping to accomplish with the healing, and I'll get to it. I will do it. I don't turn anybody away, but it sometimes takes me a while, and I've been as far behind as a month, but right now I'm about 2 weeks behind. And I hope everything's okay with Marlene and that she's back soon. Thankfully, I do love to talk, so we'll just keep on talking. And if you do want the book, Slipstream Shaman, I'll show you the picture again. I love it. It's by the cover is from a Florida lady, and Jenny Ashford, and I think she just did a brilliant job. Really got what we were hoping for. And you can find it on Amazon. And something I want to tell you about it is it's a fast read. It's set up that if you got the book today, you could read the whole book in 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer than 2 hours. If you just wanted to learn how to do the processes, you could do that in about 45 minutes and start practicing. The first half of the book is how to do what I do. The second half is different experiences that I've had. And it looks like we've about got Marlene back.
Yes, I'm back. God. Let's see. It's like I'm telling you that, hold on, Marlene. Here we go. Everybody could say, "Oh no, it's just," and it's like, you know what? It's so weird because this stuff like this usually, let's see, doesn't happen. It's like, oh, YouTube. Let's see. Let me get here so I can like. Okay, here we go. Here we go.
Oh, looks
Here
like
we
we're getting
go.
close. There you
Yeah,
are.
we're good. Yes, God, I'm telling you. You know what? There's something about you.
I get that a lot.
I bet, right?
I hope
No,
it doesn't
and you
get
know what? And a lot of people could say, "Oh, the time." You know, I I've never had the camera. I've had audio sometimes go wonky. Never my video camera. I've had this. I have Logitech, and it's like very reliable. That's why I've stuck with it. I even have a
yes.
backup there, but it's great. And I don't know if it's you or that talk about well, we were talking about your beagle. Everything was cool, copacetic, man. We went into shadow people land, and all of a sudden, it was like, "Ah,"
We'll avoid
you
those
know.
guys.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people have that I've guessed that I've spoken to have always said, you know what? For some reason, certain conversations about certain paranormal subjects will do weird things to electronics
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's the internet, the connection, the computer, the audio, the visual. I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Too much
And
so that it's more than a coincidence. Because exactly like this, everything's been working fine. And the reason I know that is that besides I use this camera for meetings, Zoom meetings and other types of meetings, not a problem. Now I
yeah.
decide it wants to go south. But let's getting back. let's that's totally low. Let's go back to sharp people. I'm not gonna. And I know what you were saying that no, that not necessarily are they negative. Um, and I remember I used to work with this girl, and this was the first time. This was back in the '80s. This is long before this subject of Hat Man or Shadow People came up. And I remember her telling me. Now she lived in a little apartment in the city. This was their. She wakes up and she sees the equivalent of a shadow man. She does it, but he's got a top hat on.
Hmm.
Okay, like in other words, he's dressed like he's going to the opera.
Yeah.
And it totally wigged out. She was a teenager because when we spoke, she was in her 20s, but this had happened to her when she was a teenager. Like there was no reason why she would see it. It scared her because it was standing at the foot of her bed.
Yep.
And she said that it was, she like screamed, like, she says, I think I woke up the apartment building.
Sure.
And she never saw it again. She had no context, nothing, no, why she would see that. Of all things, a guy with an opera hat on, with a top
Yeah.
hat on.
And there's so many people, around the world that see these things, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but yeah, sometimes they describe it as a cowboy hat or a top hat
Yes.
or a helmet. And so just I don't know if it's just what your frame of reference is, but yeah,
Yes.
they all talk, almost all of them talk about something on their head. And but yeah, top hat is a very common way that they describe it.
Yeah.
One guy said he thought it was Mr. Peanut when he first saw it.
Oh my
He
God,
was
that's
Planet Peanut.
yeah, yeah. And I looked at her and I was like, a top hat? I was like, what? And she goes, yeah. And she says it was like a two-bedroom apartment. She was an only kid. Her parents are asleep. She's a teenager. She wakes up and she's this guy standing like with a top hat on. It's
Yeah.
like, what? And yeah, and it's again, this was back in the '80s because they've talked more about Shadow Man and Hat People in these last few years with the paranormal shows, but she
Mhm.
had this sighting way back when nobody ever talked about this. Yeah,
Yes.
ghosts, but nothing like a top hat or somebody with a shadow. Nothing like that. So that as far as the believability, plus I knew her. She wouldn't have made that up just to like. It was such an. She goes, no, this happened to me when I was like a teenager, and I've never forgotten it. Was never saw it again, thank God. And
Yeah.
I know maybe you've heard of some people that say, "Oh, it's like Like the banshee effect, some people equate it like, oh, you see shadow people and it's like a warning, like something disaster is coming or death or, there's
Yeah,
different interpretations on that as
yeah,
far
and
as
I just haven't seen that to be the case, and I think that's one of the things that they do on TV is try to sensationalize it so that they
right,
keep people watching. But the people I've talked to mostly just see it as neutral. They didn't think it was bad. They didn't think it was good, but they weren't afraid of it. It was just neutral and it seemed interested in them. They were
right,
they if they were scared at all, it was because they didn't expect to see something like that
sure,
in their bedroom. When I saw the first one that I saw was I was at work overnight at a place. I was stocking a plumbing aisle, and the hair on my arm stood up, and I thought somebody's watching me, and I turned around, and there he was. And I want I got this thrill out of it, that adrenaline rush that I talked about earlier, and
uh-huh,
I looked forward to every night hoping that I'd see it again, and I saw
right.
it probably 10 plus times while I worked there, and I've seen it several times since, but it's always so fast that you just don't get the best look at it,
Hmm.
and you always wish you could get a better look.
I remembered recently I was listening to these old Art Bell broadcast, and this was one from 2015 where he saw one, and he was describing how he had seen a shadow man, and he was wigged out considering how many people, and he says that he even went and he had some firearms, and he says he got a gun out and he went and he checked his house and the perimeter of his house,
Yes.
and he was talking about how this had profoundly, because I guess it's one thing when you talk to your guests about it,
Mhm.
and then it's when you actually see it. And
Well, and
he
that's
this
for us as radio people, podcast radio people,
hmm
we get to interview a lot of people that have seen ghosts, have done exorcisms,
yeah,
had a near death experience, all these things, been abducted by aliens, seen Bigfoot, all these things, and we just get to hear about it. We didn't get to experience it,
right,
and so to actually get to experience it, and I've been lucky enough to see the shadow people. I get where he's coming from. I can see why he's excited because he talked to everybody. There was no topic that Art Bell didn't cover, and so
right.
for him to actually be a part of one of them, I could see why he was just bouncing off the walls because he was always the person hearing about it, not the person
hmm
living it. So good for him. I'm really happy that he got to do that.
No, this was in, he passed away in 2018, and this was like in 2015. This was already when he was Midnight in the Desert, when he had already switched over his programming. And I remember listening to him, and you could tell he was genuinely wigged out, like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah,
you know and it sometimes those things happen unexpectedly because he had this. I've listened to a lot of his material even from the old times when it was coast to coast, or his original show, and he had a couple of weird stuff, um but this was the one of the latest ones that you could tell it really shook him up.
yeah.
And I guess it's just this feeling that you don't know what the origins are. I want to say in some cases it even scares people sometimes that if they saw like a ghost, when I mean the ghost is like something, that you could make out the shape or the form or the face or something that you could say, oh well, it was a lady in white or whatever.
Yeah.
So so let me ask you, when you went to, did you go into any of these places? Did you ever find one that it deserved the reputation that it had before you got there? It was like, wow, this was
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I'll tell you about two places actually. One of them is Eureka Cemetery in the West Desert of Utah,
okay.
and we were there. And this was before I was doing the energy work. This has been quite a while ago, and one of the people that was there with me could do energy work. And
Okay.
as we were up there, there was four of us, and we represented three different teams. And he meditated and he reached out to the cemetery, and you always had weird things going on out there. You couldn't go to Eureka without getting a strange EVP, without seeing a UFO, without
Okay.
thinking you saw a ghost. And so yeah, it lived up to it. And more than once we'd be pulling in as another group was running away, trying to get away from it.
And they're
So
peeling out, and you're like, all right.
yeah, it was highly active. And he reached out with his energy and he said, there are three there are three sentinels here watching this place.
Oh my
This
God! He
place.
called them sentinels?
Sentinels, yes.
Oh, finally somebody knows what. I've talked about sentinels and people are going, what are you talking about? Keep
Oh,
going.
yeah. So anyway, there's three sentinels protecting the place, and
Yes.
he says we have to be very respectful. You cannot
Hmm.
spit. You cannot pee. You cannot
Yes.
throw garbage. You have to be very, very
Yes.
respectful. And while he's saying this, as I'm reviewing my audio a couple days later, I have this wonderful EVP, and it says, "Who brought us this?" As he's talking, but it sounded a little odd, so I reversed that EVP to listen to it backwards, and it
Mm-hmm.
said brought his message. So
Okay.
playing it one way, who brought us this? Playing it backwards, brought this message, and they were, the way it sounded was they were very impressed with Brett and what he was doing and how he figured them
Mm-hmm.
out. And so that place never ceased to amaze us. And then the other one was at a young lady's house in Preston, Idaho. And Preston, Idaho is famous because that's where they filmed Napoleon Dynamite. And
Okay. Yeah.
her house was about a block and a half away from the house that was Pedro's house in the movie.
Okay. I
and
love that movie,
that,
but it's like,
oh my God, I love it too. But she would have roommates. She always had roommates in there, and they would never stay long, 2 3 months, because there was so many things going on. They would see apparitions, things would slam, they would hear voices, and we're doing an investigation there. And I put my recorder up in the attic,
okay.
and in less than an hour, I had 115 EVPs, and it was
Oh,
multiple voices. I had a woman, a young girl, a mean man, a dog barking. There was so much going on. It was exhausting. It took me about 4 hours to listen to that um, audio
okay.
because I had to keep stopping and listening and making notes. And it was just going on and on and on. And it sounded like the woman was trying to protect the little girl from the mean man. And
Okay.
he hated us being there, and he was swearing, and it was just awful. Um, but that place certainly lived up to its reputation.
So, was it, were they part of that house? Was she a medium? What were they doing there?
That family, so her mother and her aunt were on the team, and her aunt
Okay.
and I were the ones that started this team. And when I said earlier that I think hauntings are more about people, and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that started by watching those two. We never went anywhere that we didn't have an EVP. It didn't matter
Okay.
what we were doing, and I'm convinced it's because of those two ladies. They
Okay.
would draw in energy, and we
Mm-hmm.
would get these
Yes.
EVPs.
Yes.
And so the girl that lived there, the daughter, the niece, she loved it. She thought it was the best thing in the world to live in a haunted house,
Yeah.
but her roommates never did, and they didn't stay
I
long.
bet.
But that place was crazy. It was just busy, and stuff was always touching my hair right here. Um,
It's
so there
like,
was a little bit of everything. We would hear things, I'd get touched, and it really. And I had more of a marine haircut at the time, and right where the fade would start, that was where they liked to touch, and I
uh-huh.
got touched a lot in that house. Pretty fun.
And that's an unusual experience. Let me tell you something. I want to say that that's sometimes, whether you want to say it is worse than seeing something, when you something touches you and you know there's nothing like, oh, I didn't bump into that. It's like something touched you. That
Yeah,
that's a whole different feeling right there. As far as
yeah,
like, that, yeah, that's when you put your big boy or big girl pants on. It's like, if you're doing paranormal work as far as
yes,
investigations. And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, Todd, because sometimes people, they'll go on paranormal investigations, and sometimes they'll pull in evidence or EVPs that somehow don't click with what's supposed to be there. And I said, do you realize that when you get a team, especially if you have a sensitive or anybody in there, you're putting out an all points bulletin to any
yeah,
free floaters out there, like, whoosh, they're going to come in. If you think the only thing that's going to come around is if there's anything in that house, no, you're always going to draw in somebody that's hungry to communicate or something for
yes,
whatever reason. And that's sometimes why you'll get evidence that you're like, what is this? You
yeah.
know? what does that have to do with anything here? And they never talked about the barking dog or the old lady. Where did this come from? And it's
Sure.
just because sometimes people think that if a house is supposed to be haunted by so certain entities that have been described, that's all you might get, and that's not
Yeah.
the case.
Oh,
Yeah.
a fun one. I'd love to tell you about this one. We were in an Elks Club in
Okay.
kind of by Preston actually, and I'm out in the middle of the dance floor where they bring bars in and have dances. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
bring bands and have dances. And I'm in the middle of this thing, and I'm just asking questions. And a female's voice asked me to dance in Italian while I'm standing in the middle of this dance floor.
Wow. There
And
you
I
go.
thought it was just a weird word. And as I'm playing it to the different people in the group, one of them told me that's Italian, and you just were asked to dance. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and then sometimes it makes complete sense.
Sure.
Something asking you to dance at the thing, but many times it doesn't make any sense at all. The things they're
Mm-hmm.
saying, they might be responding to things you ask, and it might just be random words, concepts that
Right.
come through.
Or yeah, something that you're like, what?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about paranormal research. And I imagine having a shaman along helps sometimes to differentiate. Did you ever run across something that you were like, wow, this is dark or this is malevolent or what? Did you ever come across anything like that when you were going
So
into it?
personally, no. Now, doing the work I do now, yes, sometimes I run into things.
Okay.
When I was doing a lot of the paranormal work, I did
Mm-hmm.
not. I did go home twice, and I didn't feel it, but I would go home and get change over, get ready for bed, and notice that I would have scratches on my arm. And
Okay.
we'd been in a place where I had a jacket on all night, long sleeve shirt and a jacket. Now I've got
Mm-hmm.
scratches on my arm,
Okay.
quite bad ones. And so, I think there was some contact, but I didn't even know it happened.
Mm-hmm.
That happened a few different times. And but no, doing that, I when I was doing the paranormal stuff, I never ran into that. But doing the shaman work, there are times, like I said, about 5% of the times that I find problems, it's a parasite. And
Okay.
some people would call these things aliens, some would call them demons.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Some of them they felt like both. Sometimes I feel like it's an
Yeah, I
alien.
have,
Sometimes I think it's a demon.
with hypnotherapy work and this, other authors, doctors, that have worked in this field that have actually gone into that. They have found that, and in some cases, they do differentiate versus ETs attachments to non-humans, whether you want to call them demons or non-humans, but separate from ET attachments.
Yes.
Okay, they describe finding both. Because I know what you're saying that some people will call ET demons or they
Yeah.
kind of put it all into the same bag,
Right. Yeah.
and that's not in the experience of some people they don't. Let me that in other words, they're two different things.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
what I see is that the ones that I call aliens tend
hmm.
to the things that I see that we work on tend to be kind of mechanical, like a
Okay.
tube with like robot fingers holding onto you to suck energy out. Where
Okay.
the things that I would call a non-human or a demon tend to like be on top of the person, clawing into them,
Yes.
maybe a sucker in their mouth pulling energy out of them, or some
Yes.
other thing doing that. It's
Hmm.
more of an organic interaction with those other things. So that's how I have differentiated it so far, where the
Yes.
things feel like aliens to me with the mechanical, and non-human or demon when it's their own body that's sucking the energy out of people.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's really interesting. Um, I don't know if you'd had run across this where sometimes people have had an attachment, let's say from a family member, and sometimes you'll have that person. Let's say the attachment is from somebody that had a bad hip. This is just an example. All of a sudden, or a bad knee, and sometimes that person will start feeling like I got a bad knee or a bad hip, even though they don't have any type of injury there.
Yes.
Okay, and they'll be like, they'll even go to the doctor going, "Yeah," and they'll get X-rays or whatever, and the doctor's like, "There's nothing wrong with your knee or your hip. You're fine."
Hmm.
But they're like, "Yeah, but," or sometimes, and in some case, some people don't realize that it you can see it on a physical level sometimes. The
Absolutely.
influence.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes as I'm working with these people, that's what happens to me. I'll be working with them, and Desi's doing different things, and I'm making notes the whole time because when I'm doing this work, it's completely in spirit and energy, and my
Mm-hmm.
brain does it processes it at the moment, but it can't hold it, and so I have to make
Okay.
notes. If I don't make notes, I'll forget the whole thing in 5 minutes.
Really?
So I'm making notes throughout, and some of my notes will say um, the right side of my face tingles, or my left knee feels like it's throbbing, and I just leave that in the notes for the people, and many times they will tell me that something has slapped them in the face, or that the knee, like you talked about, is hurting. So I
Mm-hmm.
start to even manifest a little bit of it in my body while it's
Yes.
happening, and I don't interpret it. I just write down that I felt it, so
Right.
that they can look into that and see if it means anything for them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah. And let me ask you, as a shaman, do you find where in some cases people, I'm not going to put it as an attachment, people have, what's the best word for this? Issues, trauma, unresolved trauma that eventually starts to manifest in the body, as in takes on a life of its own. I don't know how to best put this without
Yeah.
sounding weird, but
Yeah. Um,
um,
so many times what happens with trauma, and I hope I'm on the track that you're asking, but
uh-huh.
it's not so much the physical injury, it's the
Mm-hmm.
emotional injury.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's what the second book is all about. And that should I'm hoping to have that out this month, but it'll be the first of next month if not. And it's called trauma release. And
Mm-hmm.
so you get the injury, and I'll just give you an example. I had a hernia operation in high school, and I died on the operating table,
Oh,
and I watched the nurses and doctors freak out for about 30 seconds, then I got sucked back into my body. And
okay.
that hernia scar stayed with me, and it was very painful for the next probably 20 years. And it was swollen, it was red, and a hernia operation is right where your belt is, so it was always
Mm-hmm.
something always touching it, and it always hurt. And then I learned about a trauma release process. It's not the one I do. It's mine's evolved from that. And when I did it, I felt an immediate relief there, and within a month there was no pain on that anymore. I'd spent 20 years with this
Wow.
thing hurting me. A month later, it no longer hurt. A year later, the swelling was gone. You couldn't see it at all. And now it's
Uh-huh.
it's been probably 15, 20 years since I did that, and I can't find the scar.
So
Um,
what do you think was the trauma when that near death moment where your body stopped? In other
it
words, where you
might
thought,
have been, or maybe all the pain with it. Um, you
okay.
know, when I had that surgery, it was like 1979, maybe 80, and
Mm-hmm.
and you were staying in the hospital for a week after a hernia operation,
Yeah,
and there
yeah,
was
back
a
then.
lot of
Yeah, there was no
pain.
outpatient kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it took forever to get better. It hurt to walk for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
and um, and I think just that whole thing um, was part of it, or maybe there was something else attached to. I really don't know, but just doing that easy process, a 5 minute process, release that trauma, and then I was able to start healing.
I'm glad you mentioned it because sometimes people think that to get that result or that relief has got to be something complicated. And sometimes it's very simple, really. And you think,
Yes.
no, it can't be that simple. And
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Let me
Sometimes
ask,
it's super simple.
right, it's not like, oh, the waving of arms or anything like that. It's maybe whether it's an acknowledgement of even focusing the attention there or whatever the process was.
Hmm.
And then, of course, like very important, especially in this age of instant gratification, sometimes these changes take a little bit of time to actually
Yes.
use they work, you know,
Yeah.
where these things start melting away, if you want to look at it that way, as far
Hmm.
as whether it's a physical feeling or, and it's not like you wake up the next day and it's like, oh, it's gone. No, sometimes it's a week, 2 weeks, a month, it's gradual, and then it's gone. That's
Yeah.
so
And
interesting.
it's with the Slipstream. The reason I named it the book Slipstream Shaman was if for those people that don't know what it is when you're on the freeway and a semi goes by you and it kind of pushes you over to the side and then sucks you back over. That's part of its slipstream. And if you get behind it, you'll notice that you're going faster than you were, but your RPMs are going down. You're using less energy to go faster, and that's part of the slipstream. And that's what this healing work that I do does. It's going to help you heal in the present. It's going to shoot out into the future to help your healing there. It's going to push to the past, and it's going to heal you in all different directions at the same time. And the idea is for it to go fast, but sometimes it takes a few days or a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
as it builds momentum. And it's hard to say something that you would think would be an easy heal could take a month or two. Things that you would think would be bad, like a heart, could happen immediately. So you just don't know, and it's each of them are going to do their own thing. But that's what you'll learn with this book is healing yourself and just letting that energy flow in both directions on your timeline and going back and healing and even healing in different generations. We talk about healing 7 generations in the future, seven
Oh,
generations in the past.
past.
And all those things take place when you do the healing and let the energy work.
Let me ask you, do you do any work like when you said with generational, with vows or anything that any of your ancestors might have taken, even if you don't have any idea who the ancestor was or what they said or vowed? Do you work with anything like that?
So I haven't worked with different vows like that. What has happened is I had a very rough relationship with my mother, and
Mm-hmm.
she has actually shown up on the love team to help with the love energy. She
Okay.
has passed, but she didn't show up as the person that I know, the person that I had the bad feelings for. She showed up as a 7-year-old little girl with pigtails.
Really?
I can't hate a 7-year-old little girl with
Ah,
pigtails.
okay,
I
okay,
can't do anything but love that little girl, and so it was the
okay,
perfect way for her to show up and help me heal. And by helping me heal, it helped her heal, and by
okay.
helping her heal, it helped who hurt her heal. And
Right,
so I know that for sure 3 generations have healed because of that, just by how I see her now. And and so there's the generational healing is pretty fun. It's fun to watch when I see it happen. It's normally at the end of the process on a healing, and the 7 generations come together to surround a person. And many times, if I'm looking down at it, it's kind of like looking at the Mayan calendar. There's all these symbols and shapes start to appear
right,
from the generations moving around, and I'll let the people know. I saw S's and sevens and blue,
right,
and whatever that means to them. But yeah, the 7 generations are working with them. A really cool thing that just happened on a healing I did was the generations came together, and the generations from the past moved to his future timeline. The
okay.
generations from the future moved to his past timeline and started working there. And I'm not sure exactly what they were doing, but man, the energy started swirling like crazy. There was really
Okay.
good stuff happening. And that was something they did just intuitively. They knew that person needed and that they needed, that the generations needed. And so a lot of healing took place in that moment.
Right. And I think sometimes people don't realize that your ancestors, even if you don't obviously never met them or even know what they look like, or sometimes even don't know their name, they're still, DNA is DNA. The family there is it's there.
Yeah.
The family
And
line is
then
there.
absolutely. And the generations that I see are not necessarily all blood generations. That's certainly a big
Okay.
part of it. But
Right.
what you're seeing is energy generations as well. And that could be from your spirit groups. That could be from the energy the friends you've made, the extended families that you have, and their relatives as well. So it's more than just blood and DNA, which is certainly the base of it and the strength of it, but many things beside that come into effect. So if somebody's saying, well, I don't have kids, so there can be no 7 generations in the future, yes,
Right.
and they're part of your spirit group, they're part of your friends,
Exactly.
they're different things. We become a
Right. You
bigger
have step
community than we
parents,
know.
you have step,
Yeah,
whatever, stepsisters, brothers. And I
best
know
friends,
exactly what you
all
mean.
those
Yeah,
things.
best. Yeah. Let me ask you, have you run, I don't know if you've heard of they're called tulpas or thought forms or things that people have created. Basically, It's like a thought form that somebody has supposedly animated, and in some cases it's gotten away from them. Have you run
You
across
know,
anything like that in your work?
yeah, and I think a lot of the things that I deal with are those. And I was talking on another show, and a thought occurred to me because both myself and the two hosts have a bit of a problem when we drive. We're a little bit of a road rage people, you know. And so the three of us were talking about how mad we'd get when we were driving, and
Okay.
the thought occurred to me is those thoughts, those horrible thoughts that I have while the road rage is taking place. And I don't like drive people off the road. I'm just yelling at myself and those kind of things. And
I think
and I just
everybody
know
does
they did
that
it on
though.
purpose. And you know,
Yeah.
and but I got the very distinct impression that those very negative thoughts that I had would take life, would go out and become those parasites that I talked about, where
Okay.
they attach to somebody and start draining them. So yes, I think that's happening a lot when we're really really angry and frustrated. And you might see those things happening in mob scenes, certainly in road rage, different things when people are really feeling like they have no power, no control, and they have those awful thoughts. I think those things do find a way to manifest and hold energy and go out and become a parasite on somebody. Maybe the person that animated them, maybe other people. But yes, I definitely think if I'm saying what you're talking about, I
Right.
think they do
Well,
come out.
in some cases, I think, and I've told people, that there's always like attract like. If you're an angry person, you're going to attract either angry entities or angry thought forms or angry whatever. Same thing as if you're a sad person, you kind of like, it's like you kind of like a magnet for this, you
Yes.
know. Um, Again, whether they're thought forms or and the what I was referring to as far as a tulpa. Originally, what I heard about it was they used to do it in Tibet. This was around the turn of the century, where the monks, they spent a lot of time, you know, basically meditating. Okay, and this was where they would, let's say, think of conjure a person in their mind. All right, and give it details, not like, like this person or this is going to look like this, and in some cases it would they would form it so much and give it so much energy mentally that it would take on a life of its own. In other words, become an entity, not just something that you think of in your head. And the story that I read, this was a lady. She was European. She went into Tibet disguised when it was a forbidden city that Europeans couldn't go in there, and she described how she had started it. She had thought of a monk. He said called it a chubby monk and this and that, and but it got to the point where it got away from her, where she started seeing it when it was like, hey, what are you doing there? And
Yeah.
basically the stop form became separate from her, from her. It wasn't only in her head, and from her power. So she had to kind of dismantle it little by little, the same, like in reverse. And the reason why I ask this is because I've heard, if not so much a tulpa, where, I don't know if you've heard of it, where how somebody will have this obsessive, like, let's say, think bad things towards you, like, hey, how these people, like, all they do is sit there and say, oh, I hope you fall off the side of a cliff, or you got some
Yeah.
neighbor. And I don't know if you've run across where people are, it's not like a ghost or anything like that. It's basically the product of somebody else, a living person is the originator, putting so much intent and thought and obsession against the, say, this other person, that it actually, there's some manifestation on the physical plane of all that intent. Have you ever run across
Yeah.
that?
I personally have not. One of the things that was popping to mind as you were talking is there's a phenomenon called the Thin Man, and
Yes.
the Thin Man started as a writing contest. It was a story in a writing contest, and
Mm-hmm.
this thing has taken a life of its own, and people really believe they have seen this.
Mm-hmm.
I have talked to several. I've personally talked to several people that think they've seen the Thin Man,
Okay.
and it was from a story. It's uh, but there's so much energy that was put into it, and I'm not sure exactly how everything lined up, but
That's a
so
great,
many
let me tell you,
people
that's
that,
a great example that you just brought up right
yeah,
now.
they read about it and they thought about it, and somehow enough people thought it through to that it conjured, and the
Hmm.
people that I've talked to that have seen it are very, they're friends, they're very reputable, they're very careful in their research, but they are dead set serious that they've seen this thing.
Right,
um,
exactly. Yeah, that
so
that
I
was
think
that
it
whole
can
set of
happen.
characters that they call the creepy pasta, and I think there was another one's called the Rake. They had like a couple of characters
Yeah,
where it started as almost like as a kid thing, and then it took off, and it
yes.
makes you think, okay, is this thing getting its life because it's been thought into being, into manifestation on this plane?
It makes you wonder, and it seems to have, um,
Right.
just based on the people I've talked to, it seems to have found a life, just from pure thought, and the way we accidentally manipulated that energy to create it and
Yeah.
let it do its thing, and then as it's seen more and more, I think it gets strength, and who knows where it would end, where it will end. But
Well,
yeah,
I
I
think it's
think
the
I
power of
think
the
it'll
human
definitely.
mind.
Hmm.
People don't,
Oh
I
yeah.
think they underestimate the power of the human mind. As far as, I mean, if you let's, I mean, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you remember back in 2007 when that movie The Secret came out,
Hmm.
that, a lot of it, a lot of people were saying, "Oh my God, if it was that simple." But basically, if you, I don't know if you remember,
Yeah.
the primary tenet was, if what you can think of, you can manifest. Oh, don't,
Right.
you know, on the physical plane. All
Yeah.
right, and in a way, but that works both ways, for good and for, you know, Thin Man too, is what people
Yes.
don't realize.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And what I've seen on the secret side, the manifest side, where people, they want to do stuff. What I've what I've witnessed is that the people that do that, they meditate, they manifest, they think about what they
mhm.
want. The ones that actually get it take action, and
Yes, of
I
course.
want this and this and this, and then that leads them down a path of taking different action, and they get there. What most people do is, I want this pot of gold, I want this pot of gold, I want this pot of gold. I don't have the pot of gold, I quit. uh, they
Right,
don't think
exactly.
about what goes into getting it. It's not going to
Yes.
appear like pushing a button on Star Trek and having your drink appear in the machine.
Well,
It
this is what I
takes
find
work.
that a lot of people thought that it was like, and it's like exactly like what you described. And some people say, well, the actions are, well, you know what, maybe it's far-fetched, but sometimes it's actually putting into action that with that intent. Like, I want this, this to whatever it is. Let's go for the car thing, whatever you want, that you think that I'm never going to be, and you start working towards it, not really knowing how. The how
Yeah,
is like, let's leave that out to the side. Once you go in that intent and you start, like you said, you get off and you start working towards it, at some point, you never know. The universe might bring you that person that you meet that offers you a job or introduces you to this person. It could be
yeah,
a series that if you try pre-identify how that's going to happen, forget it. You have to
yeah.
kind of leave it at an open end and work towards it, and don't worry so much of the how, and give it a chance to
Yeah.
manifest. But exactly
Just
like
let
you
it
said, I
do it.
think,
Yeah,
right. Some people want to sit on the sofa and go, I'm gonna meditate, and that brand new car that I want, it's gonna show up in my driveway. No.
yeah, yeah. It's not that way.
Or I'm gonna win the
But
lotto. It'd be like, oh,
yeah, but I think when you're doing that, when you're thinking about that house, or the way you want your family, the things you want your family to have, as you think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it, you're creating energy that helps you find a way to get it.
sure.
And doing that over and over and over does lead you to what you're wanting, if you continue to do it, if you don't give up.
And I will say, I remember that one of the things that some people say, well, that they were saying, let's say you have this certain house that you would like. We're gonna go there, whatever it might be, whether it's a cottage on the beach or whether it's whatever. And people can say, well, you could watch it in a magazine, but I agree. Sometimes the way our brain works is, go in there, go to some housing development where there's a model. Nobody's, they're going to let you in and look at the models. Nobody's going to see if you can afford it or not. Because for some reason, when we can actually see it firsthand, it's much more possible. I don't know, something happens in your brain versus something that you see in a magazine. You see,
Yeah,
if
you're
if you've
getting.
got nothing better, okay, use the magazine. But there's something that happens when you go there and you see it, as far as
Yeah.
making it more substantial in your brain, as in being able to manifest it in
Mhm.
this plane. All right.
Yes.
Or what people, sometimes it's not manifesting in this plane. Maybe it already exists. It's having you be able to cross paths with it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes people don't realize that you've got to, like, whet your appetite for it in the most tactile sense that you can, whatever the case. Even if, let's say, the same thing with a car, hey, go take it for a test drive. They have no
Mhm.
idea whether you can afford it right then and there or not. And some people say, what a waste of time. It's not, nah, not really. You
No.
know, depends on, and if you're a little bit patient, but I'm glad you pointed that out. But, unfortunately, sometimes we're into instant gratification, and if it doesn't happen like next week, it's like,
Then you stop. Yeah. And when you're in the place, when you're in the house, and when you're in the car, well, now you smell it. Now you
yeah,
know how it
exactly.
feels in there. Now
Yeah.
just there's so many more things going on than just when
Yes.
you when you look at it, like you said, looking at a magazine. If that's all you can do, that's great, and it's a good start. But man, when you're actually there and you can touch it and smell it and feel the energy of it, makes a big difference.
Sure. Sure. And then, I mean, we could go down this thing of are you going to self sabotage? What is, you may say, and I'm going to go back to my hypnosis and the power of the subconscious mind, where 88% of our mind is our subconscious, where you might want it logically or say, oh, but there's a part of you where is like, oh my God, that's beyond me, like, yeah, this is my comfort zone. And if I get that, then, if I lose it, your subconscious mind will drive all this, extrapolate into all these negative things that will come of acquiring that. So that's why you see sometimes also people self sabotage on their best intentions of acquiring whatever it might be. It could be anything. If they believe themselves that either they don't deserve it, or, if I get it, then I'll lose it. Things
Yeah.
that, people make up in their head.
Yep.
And
Go
it's
with that
working through
initial
that.
energy. Keep that initial
Yes.
energy. You tapped into something, and it
Yes.
seems so clear, so vivid, so attainable. And
Yes.
then that different voice comes in, and that's our mind, that's our ego. That first thing you heard was more of a spirit level, more of an energy level, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the truth. That's the
Yes.
one you follow, and so you hold on to that energy and keep that feel, and that will help guide you to what you're after. And who knows if it was because of the house or the trip or whatever, but there's some reason that you needed to be there for your family, for the good of society, whatever the case is.
Yes.
Just go with it. If you got that energy and it's telling you this, you deserve this, and this is you, stay
Yeah.
with that. Don't let that little thought creep in.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is so true. And I mean, it's an area where a lot of people go, oh, that's so out there. And it's like, no, you'd be surprised. A lot of, like I said, like attracts like, and a lot of people, sometimes they'll bring people or situations to themselves, including even in the paranormal field, you know, like what you were discussing, because of the vibrations they put out. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you just spoke about vibrations, as in, and sometimes you put them, even if if you think you're not consciously are, but you are.
Yes. Yeah, everything's energy, and those vibrations are
Yes.
always happening, and getting them going in the right direction for you is the key. And you can feel it when you're with people, and like you said, like attracts like. And you, if you're a high energy happy person, you don't want to be with a downer. And
Yes, God,
somebody that's a
yes.
downer doesn't want to be with a high energy person. That's too much work. And
Right.
so, if you're trying to get high energy, if you're kind of a low energy person but you want high energy, don't go to the rah rah um, football coach, basketball coach is just going crazy. Don't go for that personality. Go a little bit above you, build up your
Yeah.
energy, then go a little bit higher, build up your energy. Keep finding people with just a little bit, that are
Yeah.
a little bit closer to what you want, and associate with them, and learn from them, and change your vibration and frequency, to you align that way, and then just keep moving up.
Or, I'm sure you've heard of these stories of people that they have an inspiration to whatever it is, whether it's another job or another whatever, car or a house, moving to another state, and you have the good intentioned friend or family member that tries to talk them out of it, like, oh, I'm saving you from being disappointed, kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
and
like,
and it's always hard. You want to be positive,
sure,
but you don't want to see them go throw a bunch of money at something that you know is
sure,
not going to work out, or whatever. But yeah, I try to be that positive guy, the positive dad, the positive uncle, the positive husband, whatever the
hmm,
case is, to keep them excited and to keep them working
sure.
towards their goals. But boy, there's sometimes you're looking at thinking, I don't know if that's a great
Oh
goal
no,
to have.
sometimes you can sincerely say, well, but if somebody's really researched something, yeah, it's not like, oh, they're running off and doing something crazy. It's like, wow, I think you need to like look into that better, so at least you're better prepared, you know.
Yeah,
But then there's sometimes, you have people sometimes that you think they're not going and they make it. They
yeah,
they do it. They're like, man, I can't believe it. They got that whatever it was. And but there's others that, that's and sometimes I've said, basically if you make it, where does that leave them? Because especially if you're very similar in background or whatever in age, when one makes it is like, hey, well, now I've run out of excuses because, so and so did it. So where does
yeah.
that leave me? I can't say we're all, yeah, of course he did, nobody can kind of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Find that thing that you're passionate about and
yes,
let that energy pull you and find your purpose. One of the things I talk about in the book is when you get your quantum room and you're doing your meditation, look for your purpose. And I really thought my purpose was going to be some big weird thing that was just going to, when I knew it, it was going to open the doors and the sun was going to shine down. And what my purpose was just two words, and it was to help. And
okay,
it was super simple, but simple doesn't equal easy. It's not always easy to help. It's not always easy to find what I'm supposed to do to help. But yeah, when you find that purpose, and that's a hard thing, and I hear people talking about finding their purpose all the time. Many times you find it through meditation, and when you're doing this kind of energy work, you're able to get to a meditative state where you can find that purpose. and
sure.
and I was just so shocked that it was something that easy and clear, and how much fun I've had with it since I knew.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna change the subject. I cannot get over that picture. Did you draw that? Did you do that painting behind you?
No, I didn't. A friend of mine did. She did some paintings for a place I work, and there was just not enough room where we were putting them, so I put one in my office.
I swear to God, that painting has got me like riveted, and I don't know why. And
Yeah,
it's like,
I love it.
and it's I know the figures are really small, and and it's basically a landscape more than anything.
Yes,
But it's like,
yeah.
I
No,
was like,
there's a stringer
okay,
that just jumped up a pheasant, and so you can
okay,
barely
I'm
just
trying to
tell the
figure
head's
out like
going.
what is he? What's that
Yeah,
dog? Is it looking
he's
down
pick,
that trail? What's down
yeah,
there? You know?
yeah, pheasant up here. He's
Oh,
fixing.
okay.
It's
That
just
is
a little
great.
too far away to see, but yeah, I love it, and it tells a story, and you can get lost in it. You get lost in the trees over here. You can get lost
Yeah,
in the tree up there. There's birds
yeah,
flying around. A lot of cool stuff going on.
yeah. I like it. Okay, Todd, for my listeners, my podcast listeners, if you could give out your website address so that,
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to slipstreamshaman.com, you'll find links to a lot of different things, to some of my podcasts from my side of the universe. You'll find a link to order the book through Amazon. You'll
okay,
find a place to send me an email if you want to talk to me. There's an Instagram button you can push there, or if you go, like I was saying earlier, if you go to Instagram and just search Slipstream Shaman, you'll find me. Same with YouTube, and I would love to have more people involved in following. That's where all the new stuff will be. As the new books
okay,
come out, we'll talk about that as different events take place. It'll be on both YouTube and the Instagram. So that'll be the primary push. But if you need to contact me, if you're looking for a healing, send me an email go to slipstreamshaman.com into the email, or slipstreamshaman@gmail. Um,
okay,
and I'm right now about 2 weeks behind on getting those done. And there's times where I'm like a month behind because I get so
okay,
many of them. But I do respond to every single one, but it
okay.
sometimes takes me a little while.
Sure, sure. And let me ask you, because you're not limited. In other words, you can do this. You don't have to be in person with a person.
Yeah, it can happen anywhere. I've done healings with people on other continents. Uh,
Okay.
in like I'm in Oregon, I'm working with a couple different people in Florida now. Almost
Okay.
completely opposite of ends of the U.S. And I've done them everywhere, Canada, and a lot overseas. I love Easter Island, but I haven't done any healings for anybody in Easter Island. But someday I'll visit there and do some, and then do more remotely. But yeah, it can happen from anywhere.
I'm gonna have a link to the credits of the show. I mean, a link in the credits of the show. You said you were working on putting out a second book. You just don't know
Yes,
exactly when.
it hopefully will be out this month, if not this month, the first of next month, and it'll be
Okay.
called Slipstream Shaman 2, and it's all about trauma release, and it's to
It's
help people, first responders, military, uh, people that work in restaurants to get yelled at because they're the ones that showed up, people in
yeah.
retail, people that have had physical abuse as children, sexual
Yes.
abuse, any kind of trauma. It's going to
Hmm.
help you release it so you can start to heal and get better.
Yes. Yes. Some
And
people
I'm
will
really
say,
excited about that one.
let me tell you something. People don't realize everybody's different. You have something happen, the exact same thing to two different people, and one will take it. One will get trauma, the other one won't. And then that,
Yes.
you just change. It just depends on the personality and the situation, what's going on. Why somebody will get traumatized, even on an emotional level, let
Mm-hmm.
alone. And I'm glad you differentiated that. Even if you had physical trauma, even though the physical part is healed, there's still, like what you were talking about, your operation.
Yes.
There still could be something that still is not resolved as far as the trauma.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited about that one. And that's the first book is helping you find your energy for protection, to
Okay.
meditate, to evolve. I guess it's
Okay.
very spiritual. The next one, with the trauma release, is very nuts and bolts. It's going to take you through processes to help you feel better. Not that you won't with this book, but you're gonna. I'm I'm really excited about the trauma release aspect of it, and
Believe
what
me,
it can
that
do for
that's very
people.
that's very important. Thank you so much, Todd. It has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, and thank you for your patience when my camera went south and for
Oh,
filling
no
in there
problem.
for me, so I
Yeah,
wouldn't just have dead air.
yeah, I'm a talker. I don't mind doing that. It worked out great, and you're
Thank
a
you.
lot
It
of
was
fun,
one.
Marlene. I appreciate it.
Yes, yeah,
It
it
was
was
a blast.
great. You gotta come back, especially when you get your new book out, and we can talk about that because that trauma release I think is super important, more important than most people think of. They only think of trauma as in like physical trauma,
Yes,
and there's a whole different aspect to that.
many different layers. Yes, I'm really excited about it and can't wait to help people with it.
Take care.
Thank you for having me on. I look forward to seeing you.
Yes, bye bye. Wow, this is so interesting. Oh, there we go. Is my camera gonna go off on me again? No, it didn't. All right, there we go. Let me tell you, you know what? You could all laugh this thing about paranormal sabotage, and we're talking about shadow people, and my camera decides it's gonna go south. My camera's never go. I mean, I've been on Zoom calls earlier today, yesterday, and my camera was working just fine. It was no problem. Why I decided to do that? I have no idea. None. Or why it didn't, like, in other words, we started the show, it was fine, and all of a sudden my camera decides bye bye. And then I connected through another program, and the camera pops up. And I don't know if it's my browser, I don't know. I'll just blame it on the browser instead of the shadow people. What about that? What do you think about that? But anyway, I love talking to Todd because he went into a lot of things that um, dovetail with the paranormal. How's that? A lot of people think of the paranormal as ghosts or whatever, the haunted house or and there's a lot of, whether you want to call it the spiritual overlap, or in exactly what he said, that sometimes he finds it's not the house or the structure as it is the person. That happens a lot, and I came across it when I was doing paranormal investigations. that when you start actually talking to the person or persons, depending on, who's involved, whether it's a family or a couple or whatever, where some of them have a history, it's like, oh, so you've had these experiences before? Come to find out, really, it's them that's haunted. And by the way, sometimes you will get somebody who is got their own thing going on, and then they happen to move into a place that's got a. It's not like one or the other, and what, yeah. Or in some cases, you will have something that's dormant, and then in moves this person who's got this vibe going on for a lot of different things: attachment, generational thing, their budding medium, because. Or sometimes it's even that there's something about them, some flavor about them, whether it's the appearance or something that reawakens some dormant entity. And by this, I'm not talking about a residual. I'm not talking a residual because um, something about that person just calls out to whatever dormant entity is there for a variety of reasons. And then that's when you will have people that will have these incidents of a haunting, and nobody before ever complained about it. Or if they did, it was something very mild, and all of a sudden everything, all hell breaks loose. And they're like, why now? Why us? Why me? And there's just something about that person that, and sometimes it's an affinity. Like I said, like attracts like, you're an angry person and the entity's there that's angry or sad. Sometimes the looks, you resemble somebody they knew, so much so that they will bring them out of dormancy. Um, Sometimes it's even what you do, as far as within the house. Uh, let's go with the let's say you've got some type of, couples argue, families argue. That's the norm. I'm talking a step up, where there's where we're talking a dysfunctional level of arguments or physical abuse or verbal abuse or anything like that. And whatever was there, this resonates with them, with this entity or entities with plural. And maybe the people that were there before were, not I'm a lover, not a fighter kind of deal. They never experienced anything because they never fed into that vibe. That was not them. Now in comes this new family, and they're reenacting or giving, and all of a sudden this entity just like, hey, they're playing my song. What? And then that's when you start having this whole host of paranormal occurrences, and it's like, that's what it is. Sometimes I guess my point is that sometimes hauntings or paranormal events are, there's sometimes a level of I don't want to say complication, but it's deeper than just uh, going there and trying to pick up an EVP or doing the history. Don't get me wrong, picking up history, by the way, is very important, especially if there's history to be learned. All right. And sometimes it's impossible to find out. Like I said, you sometimes you'll have people describe stuff at very modern development. Develop as far as housing developments, and you don't. Sometimes you will find the history of the land, as in what was there before, and sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes people would build up communities that would be around for very short periods of times, especially if they weren't, if they never developed into like towns, if they were like just little communities, especially if they weren't, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, let's say the central hub of the town was maybe 5 miles away or 10 miles away. And these people had this community out here. Maybe they had shanties or little cabins, nothing official. There was no city hall. There was nothing. There was, you might get a mention maybe in the main, uh, you know, in the whatever served as the public square or the main part of the city hall, but maybe not. And basically, but you did have people living in that area. But if you ever go digging through records, you're not going to find anything. But then you're thinking, where's this coming from? And sometimes that's the origin. All right, that is the origin. Even though you again, it's always good to do a little bit of investigating, especially if you're coming up in that, and it's a more modern development. And then, of course, you always have the it's not the place, it's you, or want somebody there. And like I said, I had done investigations where I would always interview everybody. I would, first you have like a general, and then I would take and I would interview the adults, and in some cases the teenagers, and always, of course, with permission from the parent, but mostly adults by themselves, out of earshot, by the way, of their significant other. You say, well, why? Of course, when you talk to everybody, everybody's on the same page. Oh no, we've never done. Then when you'd be surprised what people will say to you when you're by yourself, and you say, "Look, this is just between you and me, but I'm trying to get, has this ever happened?" And you'll get that. That's when you get the, well, you know what, this happened to me before, and it never happened. And all of a sudden you realize it's like, okay, you have a history here. This stuff has happened to you before. As a matter of fact, it's happened to you frequently. Okay, huh? Sometimes that they've never fessed up to their other. And these are couples that have been together for years, by the way. This is not like somebody that they met that, or, um, or they've been involved in, what's the right word for this? Occult practices, especially if they don't know what they were doing, or they were seeing somebody in occult practices, and of course, they're not wanting to say, tell their partner, hey, guess what? I was seeing this person, and later on I found out, in other words, this subject has never come up. As in, yeah, this person was into some weird stuff, really weird, like in dark, and I was around, and in some cases I even participated. And yeah, that might be the reason why all this freaky stuff is not going on. And, that's what I'm saying. That's why I would always interview everybody off by themselves with it out of earshot of everybody else, because I heard a lot of stuff that'd be like, well, that explains a lot. I said, don't worry about it. It just helps us understand what's going on here better. It'd be like it's going to be up to you at some point. You know, you're going to have to come clean with this somehow, because maybe the other person has no idea, is pulling their hair out, going, "Why is this happening in our house? Or why are we experiencing this?" And you know, and it's like, well, your mate here has got something they need to tell you. But we would, of course, as a paranormal team, you're not there for that. You're not there for that. You're there to help them. You're there to help them. And of course, the best way to help somebody in this situation is for them to be truthful with you. Okay? All right? Because um you have, I'm not going to say in some instances, but you do have, let's say, people with that have nasty breakups, and one of them was into a cult. Well, I'm not going to say a cult, that's a bad word for it, into dark practices, black magic, even Satanism. And they're not, if they're the ones that they don't want out, they're like, I'm going to make your life impossible. And there's a lot of things that they can do. And if you don't know how to protect yourself, but it explains a lot sometimes why people, all of a sudden, things of this nature start to happen around them. Okay, because one of the common, what's the word I'm looking for? Not even a curse. It's uh, it's to send a spirit, a discarnate spirit into somebody's a curse. In other words, send them as an emissary, as a messenger. Um, so as a matter of fact, there's some tales that you say, well, you know what? That's like a made up, like an old wives' tale. But in some cultures, you'll hear that if you hear somebody knock on your door 3 times, all right, do not open the door. And the reason being that this is somebody has sent you a discarnate, and it's almost like the same idea as like when the vampire, you must invite them in. If when you knock, that 3 time knock on the door, and you open the door, that's basically the invitation, in the sense of, you've opened the door, you're allowing them in. And I have heard of people that will say, yeah, I heard like this 3 distinct knocks, and when I opened the door, nobody was there. And I was like, uh okay, well, we got to look at that possibility. That's not always it. But yeah, you will have some cultures that they understand that if you hear that 3 distinct knocks on the door, you don't open it. You don't open it. But yeah, that it's a lot of unusual things that can go down as far as the as paranormal versus outside of just a regular. It's a dead person that used to live here or whatever, and now they're haunting the place. There's so many. Um, what's the word? So many versions of really what's at the bottom of it. That I'm going to go back to something I haven't brought up in a while for anybody that's ever looking for a paranormal team, either to belong to or that you want to bring in to help you out, is the longer the team has been together, obviously, they have more experience. Um, Same thing as like if you want to join a team, you want to look for a team that's been together for a while, that they have experience in how to identify things, what to do, even including when to back out. And same thing, if you're going to bring in, let's face it, these are strangers into your home. Don't bring in somebody that might make it worse. All right. Besides, usually you have a telephone interview or an email exchange, and obviously some type of verbal, like on the phone. Go with what you feel. Do you feel comfortable with this person? Do you think they're experienced? Do they sound like they got things together? Do they have a website? Okay, when was it last updated? 2017? That's a problem. Guess what? What happened to their cases in the last 5 years? What did they do in the last 5 years? That's all. These are the kind of things that you got to look for when you're looking to get together with some type of paranormal team or anybody that you need for help. Look to see what they're doing, what they've been doing, what they say, and what vibe you get from them. As since we're talking about vibrations, when you talk to them, do they sound knowledgeable? Do they sound competent? Are they willing to look at other sources besides the paranormal for what's happening? Despite, and like, don't get offended. Don't get offended if this person's trying to prove that it might not be a ghost, because you might be like, no, 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 it is. No, I'm sorry. You do want somebody that's, let's take it from the point of it's not, so that if we go there, we've ruled everything else out. All right. And for those people like Todd was describing, that are so happy that they have a ghost, don't ever wish that. Don't. I'm telling you, and I keep repeating it. And I've talked to guests who say no, and I just keep quiet. In all my years of experience in this field, people that want that, it ends up becoming a burden eventually. What at the beginning was exciting and, oh my God, and we have EVPs, and we have this and that and this, and oh, and of course with this thing of the shows going on, everybody's like, oh, I'm telling you, sooner or later it goes south for them. They do one of two things. Some cases, they reached out to us, to the team that was there before, okay? But they reach out to another paranormal team. Or the most common solution was they moved away. They moved out of that house or that apartment or whatever it was. Because all of a sudden, it usually turned dark. There's different shades of dark, by the way. There's different shades of dark. And I'm not talking demonic, I'm not talking non-human. I'm talking plain old dead person that's stuck for whatever reason. I'm not talking about somebody that's dead and comes to visit. I'm talking somebody that's stuck on that plane. Okay, it could have been a nun. Okay, like the best person, if for some ever reason some nun is stuck. I mean, it doesn't matter. Eventually, being out of the light of the divine, heaven, whatever you want to call it, it does something to the human spirit. And hauntings that at the beginning were really innocuous, and oh, it's okay, and I'll just see a little knot. Given enough time, they go dark. They go dark. And like I said, and most people, they just, and believe me, I've warned enough people that have been outside, like, oh, no, 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 it's okay, they could stay here, they could stay here. I said, you sure? We're not like going to exile them to the, this is like to move them on to where they might even be afraid of going. Or no, 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 it's okay, it's okay. I said, you sure? Uh, Sometimes, most of the times, this is, you're not going to be happy with the outcome down the road. No, 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 it's okay, it's okay. Huh? A lot of times, those people, the easiest solution is to move away, versus calling somebody up or they just get totally scared because it gets out of their control. It's not a question of, oh, we're going to do the Ouija or the thing or the that, or oh my God, someone's. No, it starts taking over, and we start going into nightmares, um, things that start becoming, if not malevolent, malicious, things of that nature. And it's like, okay, I think we're going to sell the house or the apartment, or we're moving out or whatever. But yeah, that's a whole different show. Maybe we'll have one of those. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of my audience. You are all wonderful. Please go to miamighostchronicles.com or mpellicer.com. Okay, for all my latest shows, links to videos, to the podcast versions of all my shows from the very beginning. Also, sign up for my Substack. Like right now, even though it's a little bit staggered, so by the time you guys hear it, it'll be too late. But right now, I just released my last book, The Phantoms of the Follies, and I'm doing a 1 week giveaway on Amazon for the Kindle version of it. And I put that out on my Substack newsletter. That's, and it goes out 2 or 3 times a week. And I'll put articles, I'll put links to old shows for people that haven't, things of that nature. So by all means, sign up there. And I've got a lot of great guests lined up. As a matter of fact, I'm already going into season 13. Season 13, 12 is gone. Season 12 is gone, which runs all the way to the end of December. And I'm already booking in my guests into 2023 for season 13 of Stories of the Supernatural. Season 13, yay! And I've got a lot of great guests. New ones like Todd, people coming back. That a lot of people guest, some of them that they say, oh, bring that guest back. Got them coming back. So again, thank you for spending this time with me. I truly, truly appreciate it. Till next time, take care.